Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Target. Target, a lot like Bud Light, is not recovering. In fact, Target seems to be getting worse. Additional bad news continues to come out for Target. So far, sales have been down at their stores. Foot traffic is off, meaning people are not shopping there the same way they used to shop there. And additional bad news just keeps coming at Target. They're in trouble with Democrat attorney generals. They were in trouble first with Republican attorney generals over their Pride collection, which they explained could violate parental rights and be dangerous for children, as well as represented something that they should have well known was going to cause damage to the business, essentially calling them negligent executives. But in addition to that, they're being accused of violating their fiduciary duties as people who are supposed to watch out for the best financial interests for the company, not focus on pushing some kind of woke agenda. But even beyond that, attorney generals are going after them again because of their diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring programs that discriminate on employees based on race. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. I'm trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so if you can subscribe, please do subscribe. First, a little bit of background. Target in the crosshairs, taking a beating on Wall Street. This is a quick summary of what they did and what happened. Recent boycotts of Target over its in-store line of Pride merchandise have started to take a toll on Target. JP Morgan analysts downgraded their stock, which means they recommended that investors do not buy their stock because the company is more risky than it was the day before. But it wasn't just JP Morgan. They were downgraded also by Citibank, and they were downgraded by another analyst called KeyBank. Conservative media outlets began calling for a Target boycott around May 22nd over what they said were satanic designs and satanic designers. Citing safety concerns for its employees, Target pulled certain items from stores, which prompted backlash from others, including Representative Angie Craig, who said she was disappointed Target gave in to bullies. Of course, the Human Rights Campaign, multiple LGBT organizations, in addition to people who called in bomb threats who were upset that the LGBT merchandise was taken out of the stores. Overall, their stock price has dropped anywhere from $14 to $16 billion since the boycotts began in May. The market capitalization of the company, which is the value of all their stock combined, is now down to $60 billion. Before the boycott, it was as high as $74 billion just in May. Part of them getting downgraded was the horrendous drop in store traffic. 14% less people shopped at Target in the final week of May as the boycotts have roared on. In addition to this note, I've pulled from Target's social media where someone who works at Target put this post up. This is a group of people who work at Target and discuss all kinds of things related to working at Target. The lowest I've probably seen drive-ups. Genuinely at an all-time low here. It's a catch-22 because it's nice we aren't being slammed, but boring as hell because there's nothing to do. Somebody then asked, how many do you usually have? Which is a great question so you can have a context. And they say 90 to 100. We're a smaller Target store, so their sales for drive-ups are off around 50%. We'll find out what their actual sales and profitability have been. There's a quarterly report update coming on August 16th, 2023. And we'll see what numbers they report, or if they even mention the boycotts. A lot of people do not trust the management of Target right now, so it's difficult to know what they're going to say. Target actually used to have better than Walmart foot traffic. Just kind of gives you an idea that the business was doing well, and now it's not. Another massive upcoming problem they have, and this is from Business Insider, student loan holders will soon have $300 less to spend each month. That could be bad news for Target and Dick's. Why are they singling out Target and Dick's Sporting Goods? Doesn't this affect Walmart? It actually doesn't affect Walmart in the same way, and here's why. A 3+ year suspension of student loan payments is set to come to an end in October after the Supreme Court ruled last month that Joe Biden's loan forgiveness program was unconstitutional. Economists expect the change will slow consumer spending as the additional expense will force millions of borrowers to adjust their budgets. Retailers are already bracing for the shift, which financial analysts at Morgan Stanley project will affect nearly every company, some more than others. 1 in 10 adults in the U.S., an estimated 26 million people, has federal student loans, that have been in forbearance since 2020, so they haven't had to pay them. And Morgan Stanley calculates that more than 2/3 of those borrowers will face monthly payments of between $200 and $300. Quote, retailers with high exposure to student loan holders that sell into a discretionary category are likely most at risk, while retailers with low exposure to student loan holders are likely most insulated. In other words, brands like Target, whose shoppers tend to be younger and have more college and grad school debt, are likely to see more of a spending pinch than those like Walmart, whose shoppers tend to be older and have less student debt. Shoppers with $300 less to spend each month will also likely shift their spending away from less essential products like home goods and clothing and prioritize spending on essentials like groceries and car maintenance, the analysts write. In addition to Target, the analysis also calls out Dick's Sporting Goods, Wayfair, and Williams-Sonoma as particularly vulnerable to this pullback in discretionary spending. Of course, this has nothing to do with a boycott. However, the boycott certainly isn't helping them, and they should have known that at some point, no, not everyone's student loans were going to get paid off by the federal government, and they need to know who their customer is. So it was incredibly risky to say, you know what, we're going to push a social agenda on all of our customers. We don't even care if they like it or not. We're going to do it. And if they don't like it, we'll just deal with it. Well, now they're dealing with it and it's not going so good. But this was from the Democrat attorney generals. Democrat attorney generals took the political opportunity in the middle of June to send a letter to Target saying, hey, you need to put your Pride merchandise back on the shelves. It could be a civil rights violation if you don't sell LGBT clothing with tuck bathing suits, which of course really made no sense because it was at that point they had gotten rid of the merchandise. This is from Target's social media. These were marked as to be destroyed. Why can't we just send them back onto the floor like normal people? And it's mats that point gayest place in town that you would put in front of your door if you wanted a mat like that. In the meantime, they're destroying all that merchandise. Once the displays have been destroyed and the merchandise has been destroyed and everyone knew it was already destroyed, there was no way to recreate the merchandise and put it back on a shelf. So Republican attorney generals did warn Target that the Pride collection may violate child protection laws, as well as the responsibility that Target has to run the business for business purposes, not to push a social agenda. That fiduciary duty, the duty to take care when you're handling investors' money, to focus on what's right for the investors. Yes, you can be nice to the larger community, but no, you can't turn your whole business over to the LGBT agenda. That was this warning. But now things have gotten a lot more serious, even beyond that, because of the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. I covered this from the Hollywood Reporter in this video, Hollywood Meltdown. All of industry is really aware now because their attorneys are telling them, hey, these diversity programs, we can't just hire people based on race anymore. Tom Cotton wrote a letter to Target directly, but it's beyond Senator Tom Cotton writing a letter to Target. Republican attorney generals are contacting the biggest companies right now and letting them know that the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action is reason enough to stop discriminating against employees that are of a race that they don't like. And Target does have a big program for racial equity, action, and change. This is a big program they pushed for diversity, equity, and inclusion after the death of George Floyd to create situations where more of their preferred class would have more opportunities, especially in management at their company. The problem is, it's just not legal. From Fortune, 13 Republican state attorneys general are cautioning CEOs of the 100 biggest U.S. companies on the legal consequences for using race as a factor in hiring and employment practices, demonstrating how the Supreme Court's recent ruling dismantling affirmative action in higher education will trickle into the workplace. Hollywood knows it's going to affect them. Even casting in Hollywood. Check out this video if you have a chance. Things are changing because of the Supreme Court and the push of this agenda and the idea that they could discriminate against certain people if they felt like it. Nobody can, is just not valid. The state attorneys general sent a letter to the CEOs on Thursday explaining that the Supreme Court ruling declaring that race cannot be a factor in college admissions Consequently, striking down that decades-old practice also applies to private entities like employers, and lawyers know this. Quote, treating people differently because of the color of their skin, even for benign purposes, is unlawful and wrong, they wrote. The GOP officials also suggested that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs could be a form of discrimination. The letter and similar actions elsewhere have raised questions about the far-reaching consequences of the Supreme Court decision beyond higher education. But experts note that the court's ruling itself doesn't directly change current employer obligations or commitments to DEI. Quote, the decision itself does not legally impact Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which is what governs employment discrimination or discrimination in the workplace. And then they make the argument that the ruling really only applies to higher education. Hollywood doesn't agree with that. Quote, what we've been seeing a lot since the decision came down is political opponents of DEI conflating affirmative action with DEI more broadly because it serves their political purposes, said David Glasgow, executive director of what? The Meltzer Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging at New York University School of Law. Quote, I think there's a lot of quite deliberate attempts to muddy the waters here. Yeah, by you trying to muddy the waters because you're executive director for the Meltzer Center for Diversity and Inclusion. The days of discrimination are starting to come to an end. Last week, Senator Tom Cotton sent a letter to Target CEO Brian Cornell stating that the company's DEI program and racial quota for hiring was discriminatory while also pointing to the affirmative action ruling. And this is Tom Cotton's letter. I mean, all he says here is, in September 2020, Target publicly pledged to impose a racial quota for hiring decisions, announcing that it would increase the number of black employees by 20%. This is not the only racially discriminatory plan in Target's DEI initiatives. Target also promised to direct more than $2 billion in business selected based on the skin color of the owners of companies. The attorneys general said they'd be paying attention to the company's practices in hiring employees and contractors and called out companies including Airbnb, Facebook, Google, Goldman Sachs, Microsoft, and Netflix for programs intended to increase racial diversity with hires and suppliers, however, that are clearly racist. In response, employers may take steps to avoid litigation, Hoff and PR Policy Association President and CEO Tim Barl said. Quote, the increased risk for employers is this increased risk of litigation as a result of the decision. Tennessee Attorney General John Grimetti, one of the signatories, said that the letter isn't a warning to companies as much as it is a heads up that racial preferences could run afoul of the law. He added that the group decided to take action in part to respond to speculation about the Supreme Court ruling not applying to employment. Quote, the court was very clear, he said in a Friday interview, the appropriate response to racial discrimination is not more racial discrimination. So of all the top 100 companies that were targeted with these letters from attorney generals, Tom Cotton sends one directly to the CEO of Target, calling out what are probably illegal race-controlled programs. On top of all the problems that Target already has, on top of the boycotts, on top of their stock dropping. And remember, as far as an apology goes, Target has still not apologized to insulting their customers with what they did during Pride Month. They've apologized to their employees. They've apologized to the LGBT community, but they've not apologized to their actual customers that makes it possible for them to stay in business. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Do you think Target is in even more trouble than we know of so far? Or do you think they're going to somehow bounce back and be some kind of successful company again? Let me know what you think. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.